All right, so let's jump into this deep dive and take a look at Perfect Partner and see what we can find out about, finding a good partner, someone compatible,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And what I thought was really interesting about this source is that it really approaches relationships as like a team effort.
It does frame it that way, doesn't it? Like
Yeah.
you're a dynamic duo going through life together.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's such a good foundation to have, especially when you think about like the inevitable hardships that come with relationships and you need to be able to like work together.
Yeah, and actually, that brings us to something that this source really highlights, which is communication.
Hmm.
And it even goes so far as to say that, communication is like the most vital ingredient for a successful marriage.
Right.
And I feel like we hear that all the time, that communication is so important. But I'm curious to hear from you, like, what about communication makes it so crucial for a relationship?
Yeah. Well, I think this PDF really kind of, summarizes it well when it says that communication is about achieving true understanding.
Yeah.
And it's not just about, speaking to each other. It's about truly understanding your partner's thoughts, their dreams, their needs, and even, their wants and desires. It's about creating that safe space for them to be vulnerable.
That's so interesting because, yeah, and thinking about this whole communication thing, I noticed that uh, the source also mentions that sometimes the best communication isn't even about what's being said, but more about what's underneath.
Oh, yeah,
Like we have these hidden communication channels,
absolutely.
and we're conveying these emotions and intentions that we might not even realize ourselves.
You're exactly right. And the PDF, talks about these nonverbal cues, our body language, our tone of voice,
Right?
even how we react to certain situations. Those can sometimes speak louder than our words.
Yeah, it's like we're always sending these little messages to each other, even if we don't realize it. And it makes me wonder, like, how can we be more aware of those subtle cues?
Well, I think it comes down to self-awareness.
Yeah.
Perfect Partner suggests mindfulness to like, tap into our own emotions, but also pay more attention to our partner and their nonverbal cues, not just what they're saying, but how they're saying it.
So we need to like become these communication detectives,
Yes,
looking at all the little details.
that's a great way to put it.
And, another important point this source makes is about shared values. It even describes them as like guiding principles that influence our decisions. But how do we actually figure out what those are, both individually and as a couple?
Yeah, that's a good question. And the source suggests that we first reflect on our own values.
Hmm.
So ask yourself what principles are most important to you, the ones you just can't compromise on, and what guides your actions. And once you have that understanding, you can start to explore your partner's values.
Yeah, and I thought it was really interesting how they break down values in the source.
Oh,
You
yeah.
have those intrinsic values like honesty and integrity, and then there's those extrinsic values like wealth or status.
Mm.
And I could see how if one partner really values those intrinsic things
Mm.
and the other is more focused on the extrinsic, that could cause some problems.
Absolutely. And a PDF goes on to say that it's important to talk about how your values actually play out in everyday life.
Yeah.
So it's not just about, agreeing on ideas. It's about understanding how those values influence like finances or parenting decisions
Yeah.
or even, how you spend your free time.
Right. It's like taking it from the theoretical to the real world.
Exactly.
Yeah. And speaking of the real world, this source also brings up deal breakers, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
And it even says that being clear about your deal breakers is like essential for long-term happiness.
Which is true. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't want
It's
to
hard to talk
you don't
about.
want to avoid those tough conversations.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
instead of just avoiding it, just be upfront from the beginning.
Right. And I think it's also important to make that distinction between like preferences and true deal breakers. Because a preference is something you would like, but you can be flexible on. And a deal breaker is something you absolutely cannot compromise on.
Right.
That would really undermine the relationship.
That makes sense. And they give some really great examples of this too, like moral deal breakers,
Yeah.
lifestyle deal breakers, even ones related to personal growth.
Yeah.
And it really makes you think about what you absolutely can't tolerate in a partner.
Yeah.
Even if it means, having some hard conversations.
Right. From the get-go.
Yeah, exactly.
Get those out of the way.
Yeah, so you don't waste time,
Possibly.
going down the wrong path.
100%.
It's interesting, though, because I was thinking about this whole deal breaker thing and how, like, what might have been a deal breaker for me in my 20s might not be now.
Yeah.
Like, as you get older and you experience more, your priorities change.
Oh, for sure.
And I wonder if this perfect partner, like, talks about that at all, like how deal breakers can change over time.
That's a great question. And you're right. The source does mention that, like, as we grow, Our priorities shift, and what might have been a deal breaker at one stage in our life might become less important as we gain more experience and understand ourselves better.
So it's like not only do we need to figure out what our deal breakers are, but we also need to be open to, reevaluating those as we change.
Exactly.
Yeah, because it's like I said, it's not about checking boxes. It's more about this
Yeah.
ongoing, conversation that we have with ourselves and our partner about what's important.
Yeah, and that's a great point because Perfect Partner actually encourages us to view these deal breakers not as these like rigid boundaries, but as opportunities for growth and self-reflection.
Okay.
So sometimes coming up against a deal breaker can help us understand what we truly value in a partner.
Now, speaking of finding a partner, I'm curious about, this source mentions developing like a mental image of your ideal mate.
Yeah.
And I don't know how practical that is. I mean, is it really possible to like picture the perfect person?
Well, the PDF does say we shouldn't take this mental image too literally.
Okay.
It's not about like, finding someone who looks and acts exactly like you pictured, but rather using this as a way to clarify what qualities matter most to you.
So it's not really about creating this huge checklist, but more about defining the essence of what you're looking for in a partner.
Exactly. And someone who aligns with your values, someone who, you can work well with, who complements your strengths
Right.
and shares your vision for like a meaningful life together.
And the source even says that sometimes the best partners are the ones who challenge us to grow.
Yes.
It's not always about finding someone who agrees with us on everything.
Absolutely. It's about bringing different perspectives to the table and learning from each other.
And that kind of reminds me of that saying opposites attract, but like a more, mature version of that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not just about being different, it's about finding that balance.
Right, those complementary differences.
Yeah. So speaking of, actually finding someone, I'm curious what this PDF suggests, because I know it talks about engaging in like wholesome activities.
Right.
And when I first read that, I was like, wholesome activities? What does that even mean?
It sounds a little old-fashioned, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it's really about participating in things you enjoy and that align with your values.
Okay.
Because when you're doing something you love, you're more likely to attract like-minded people.
Right. That makes sense because you're naturally more relaxed
Exactly.
and you're being yourself.
It's a much more organic way to meet someone than just, online dating.
Yeah. And the source even says that these shared activities can help you figure out if you're actually compatible,
Oh, for sure.
like beyond just physical attraction.
It's like a sneak peek into their character.
You can see how they act, how they handle challenges.
Yeah, how they treat others.
And that gives you more information than just, seeing a profile picture.
Absolutely.
But speaking of online dating, I know Perfect Partner also talks about that a bit.
It does.
So what does it say about like dating apps and online platforms?
Well, it acknowledges that technology plays a big role in modern dating, but it cautions against relying solely on those methods.
Okay.
It's about using them strategically, being clear about your intentions, and presenting yourself authentically online.
So don't just, put up a fake persona.
Exactly, and approach online interactions with the same respect you would in person.
And I wonder, like, what about the pitfalls of online dating?
Right.
Because I feel like there are some unique challenges there.
Absolutely. And the PDF does talk about those. It mentions, misrepresentation or insincere individuals and even the emotional toll that can come from online dating,
Oh, yeah.
like repeated rejections or just, disappointing experiences.
So it's important to be aware of that and like protect yourself.
Absolutely. Trust your intuition and prioritize your emotional well-being.
Yeah. It also makes me think about how societal expectations can influence who we choose.
Oh, yeah.
Like what our culture tells us is desirable.
That's a huge factor.
And I wonder if Perfect Partner addresses that at all.
It does. It acknowledges how societal norms and cultural expectations play a big role in how we approach finding a partner.
And it probably encourages us to question those expectations, right?
Yes, exactly. To examine them and see if they align with our own values or if they're just, beliefs we've adopted without thinking.
So like taking a step back and really asking ourselves what we want,
Right. What truly matters to us.
not just what society tells us.
Exactly. And this is especially important when you consider how societal expectations can differ across cultures.
Right.
So what might be considered desirable in one culture might be completely different in another.
And it all comes back to like knowing yourself and your values.
Exactly.
If you're clear on what you want, it's easier to ignore all the outside noise.
100%.
And it's not just about checking boxes.
It's about finding someone who complements you, supports your growth,
Right.
and shares your vision for a fulfilling life together.
And of course, a fulfilling life together also means, working through the challenges.
Right.
Every relationship has those.
Right.
And I'm curious how Perfect Partner addresses that.
Well, it dedicates a whole section to conflict resolution
Okay.
and maintaining a healthy relationship dynamic even when disagreements happen.
And how do they suggest we do that?
It emphasizes approaching conflict as an opportunity for growth,
Okay.
not as like a battle to be won.
Yeah.
It encourages communication, active listening, and finding solutions that work for both partners.
So even when you disagree, you're still on the same team.
Exactly.
And working through those challenges can actually make your bond stronger.
Yeah, you come out on the other side even closer.
Like as saying what doesn't kill you makes you stronger,
Exactly.
but for relationships.
Right.
Yeah. It's interesting, because thinking about, going through those hard times together, that really does tie back to that whole team effort idea.
Right.
And I think this source, it really does give us a more realistic picture of what a relationship really takes.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, it definitely moves beyond that fairy tale idea of like perfect romance and effortless connection.
Yeah.
Real relationships take work and compromise and, a willingness to face challenges together.
Yeah, and this PDF gives us some really great tools for that.
Yeah.
And one of the things that stood out to me was the concept of love languages.
Oh, yeah.
It talks about how understanding your own love language
Yeah.
and your partner's can really improve communication and connection.
Yeah, it's like, learning to speak their emotional language.
Exactly. And they break down those 5 love languages,
Yeah.
words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service gifts, and physical touch.
Right.
And it explains how each one is like a different way of expressing and receiving love. And I was thinking, if your love languages don't match up, that could cause a lot of problems.
Oh, for sure.
Like imagine someone who expresses their love by like doing acts of service, doing the dishes or fixing things around the house, but their partner really needs words of affirmation.
Yeah, they're not getting what they need.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they're both trying to show love, but it's not really landing.
Right. And the PDF talks about how learning to speak each other's love language can really help with that.
Yeah.
It's about making an effort to express love in a way that your partner understands.
It's like putting in the effort to learn a new language so you can really connect with someone.
Exactly.
And, this PDF also talks about the tough stuff,
Yeah.
like heartbreak and disappointment, because let's face it, not all relationships are going to last forever.
Sure.
And sometimes, ending a relationship, even though it's painful, can actually be the best thing.
Yeah, sometimes it's necessary for growth.
And I appreciate that the source, gives advice on how to deal with those tough situations.
It talks about self-care and forgiveness and, learning from our experiences.
Right.
Even the painful ones.
It's like even though heartbreak sucks, it can teach us a lot about ourselves.
Yeah. And what we want in a partner.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I keep thinking about that message of hope that this source gives us.
Right.
It's not like a magic formula for finding love.
No.
But it does give us, a guide for how to approach relationships.
Yeah, with intention and awareness and an open heart.
Yeah, and it encourages us to see the whole process, not as like, searching for this perfect person,
Right.
but as a journey of growth and self-discovery.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so worthwhile.
So as we finish up here, I want to leave you with this thought. Remember, the perfect partner isn't out there waiting to be found.
Yeah.
It's about finding someone special and building that connection together through communication, shared values, and, that willingness to face life's ups and downs as a team.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of finding a compatible partner.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep connecting, and, don't forget that love really can make your life amazing.
It really can.